different scholars and writers and investigators. And according to this view, the ancient mystery centers such as Eleusis, the most famous one perhaps, Eleusis in Greece, were centers of spiritual teaching and shamanism that used psychoactive potions and mixtures in order to reach altered states. For instance, in the Eleusinian mysteries, it's now known that it's now widely believed that the kykeon, or the beverage that was drunk on the evening of the ceremony, was made from fermented barley that would have had the properties of lysergic acid, or LSD. So I do use these sacred plants in my practice for the reason that they are given to us for that very purpose. This is my understanding. There are about 200 species now known, probably many more. 200 species of plants that have been mapped and investigated, which have psychomimetic properties. Psychomimetic means that they imitate the actual behavior of the human psyche and the brain. So, for instance, psilocybin mushrooms, when you ingest psilocybin mushrooms, they alter your consciousness. Right, but people would say, well, why do you want your consciousness altered? Why don't you do it by yourself? Well, the way they alter your consciousness doesn't really alter it at all, because the chemical properties of these plants is psychomimetic. They actually contain the neurotransmitting agents that are already operative in your brain. And so the ancient shamans of the past knew this, and they knew that in order to reach these heightened states where we enter into the higher frequencies for communicating with the divine, we need the amplification of faculties that comes from using these substances. So that's what I do. It's a practice that has been tested and tried in indigenous cultures all around the world for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, the use of psychoactive plants to communicate with the divine is the oldest religious practice on earth, and also the safest, if it's done intelligently. And I do it in a sober and disciplined manner. I am very much against the use of these substances, ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, for recreational purposes. I'm really against that. They ought not to be used in a careless way. They ought not to be mixed with alcohol and pot and things like that. They are sacred plant substances provided by the goddess so that we can reach her in her higher frequencies and communicate with her. And this has been known. This is no revelation coming from John Lash. This has been known to our species for countless thousands of years.
So, John, then you have experienced the organic light then?
Right. My main practice is to encounter the organic light, and this is also the main practice in the pagan mystery schools, to encounter the organic light. Now, what is the organic light? Well, it's a light you see. It's a phenomenon of nature, just like clouds, just like mist in the atmosphere, like thunder or lightning. But it's a light that you see in an altered state with very particular properties. And one of the vows that was taken by the more advanced shamans in the mystery schools was that they would not speak publicly about the properties of this light. But I have done so, and as far as I know, I'm the first person to have done this at this time as a way of completing my message regarding the Sophianic myth. The organic light is actually the pure light of the goddess Sophia in her pleromic or galactic form. Remember that the core of our galaxy is a core of white light. This light is not transparent like the light that streams from the sun. It is actually substantial. It has substance, like marshmallow or nougat. And this light is a substance. And what the Gnostics knew was a very, very great secret of this light. They knew that even though the goddess Sophia, when she undertook this power surge and plunged from the galactic center and metamorphosed into the planet, even though she metamorphosed into the planet, into the mountains, the rivers, the seas, the clouds, the trees, the plants, the animals, and us, she still retained her essential divine form. And so the organic light is what I call the primary substance body of the goddess, whereas the planet that you see is her planetary body. And the practice of the Gnostics and mystics of the ancient mysteries was to go into an altered state and perceive this organic light and interact with it. And the organic light is characterized by a number of features. It's unmistakable phenomenon of nature, cannot be confused with anything else. The two features that I would point out among the several I describe, two features that I would point out that are striking are that it casts no shadow. Now, when you're in the presence of a soft, it's not brilliant, it's soft. When you're in the presence of a soft but radiant white light, and you see that it casts no shadow, this is a remarkable experience. You can't make this up. This is not something you can invent. And this is what happens when you see the organic light. Second property that I would mention in this particular context is that when you encounter the light, you enter into telepathic communication with it. It takes over your own mind and talks to you in the frequencies of your own mind and imagination, and it teaches you. And so the great secret practice of the Gnostics was instruction by the light. What they learned about the universe, about Sophia herself, about the processes of nature, about acoustics, about astronomy, about music, about architecture, about the way water behaves, about the weather, the fantastic things that they learned that made them the teachers and educators of the ancient world, they learned from encountering this light. They learned by instruction, by the light. And this is a great, great secret of the mysteries that I have made available through my book, Not in His Image.
So, egos, for me personally, getting myself out of the way to be able to reach these places, I've been able to, I'm able to meditate fairly deeply. I'm able to astral project periodically. It seems like when all my conditions are right. And here in the U.S., where getting a hold of the sacred plants is not a very easy task unless you run with a certain recreational crowd.
Right, right.
So I have really devoted a lot of time into my meditation and trying to reach those places, without the assistance of our natural tools.
Right.
I just find that getting my ego out of the way a little bit difficult.
It's very difficult, and that's why I'm not endorsing or commending anything to anyone. I'm not selling anything here. I'm not telling anyone to go out and experiment with psychoactive plants. Honestly, I'm not. I'm just telling you that I do it, and this is what happens. And if that interests you, you might want to investigate it. The point that you bring up about ego is so important, Tom, One of the reasons why we need these plants is because they can do something for us that we can do with meditative practice, but it's very difficult to achieve. And they can achieve it in the blink of an eye. You know, imagine that you're standing somewhere and you're looking down at a plaque or an engraving on a stone that's in front of you on the ground, like a gravestone or something, 10 or 15 feet away from you. There's engraving on this stone, and you're looking down, and you want to read the writing on the stone. But the sun is shining in such a way that the glare of the sun makes it impossible for you to read the writing. Now, this is a paradox, because if the sun wasn't shining and you didn't have daylight to see the writing, you wouldn't be able to read it, would you? But on the other hand, like this, the glare of a sun on the windshield when you're driving, you know how that can be. Suddenly you don't see where you're going at all anymore. It's very dangerous. The sun, which enables you to see the writing on the stone, can also put a glare on the stone that enables you, that prevents you from reading it. Well, that's what the ego does. Ego consciousness is like a glare. It's actually a glare that comes out of your eyes. And it's the glare of your own ego seeing itself. And that glare prevents you from seeing the more subtle appearance of nature. The organic light is not some mysterious thing that pops up out of nowhere. It is present right now in front of you. It is present in the room where you are. It is present everywhere. It is a phenomenon, a supernatural phenomenon of nature. But we cannot perceive it because the glare of ego consciousness gets in the way. And so the wonderful thing about these plants is not only do they amplify our brain capacities and open us to a wider range of frequencies, perceptual frequencies, but they temporarily reduce the glare of the ego. This is the real gift of these plants. They temporarily melt and dissolve the boundaries of your ego. And in that melted state, you can enter into a rapturous connection, a rapturous and ecstatic connection to the earth. And this is how the higher learning process takes place.
I was wondering, with the organic light, that's not the same light that you see when you're in a meditative state. You start seeing like a glimmer light, like twinkling. Is that the same light you're talking about?
No. The
Oh, okay.
organic light is something very specific. The organic light is not seen in meditative states where many kinds of light can be seen, many shades of brilliant light, interior light. The organic light is not seen with your eyes closed. It is not seen internally in some kind of internal inner space. The organic light wells up out of material objects. That is its specific property. It has very specific way of behaving. And I've put a lot of attention in my book and also on metahistory.org in describing the properties of this light to make it identifiable to those who would go on the journey toward this light.
John, we've got a lot of work in front of us here. What's our solution for? Is there a completion for Gaia's Sophia, or where do we go from here?
Well, there is a completion for Gaia Sophia. That's a very good question and a good place to bring around, to bring this discussion to a conclusion, perhaps. As a scholar of these Gnostic writings, which are written in this horrific language of Coptic, and they're very confused and jumbled, I've spent a great deal of time trying to sort out the plot line of Sophia's story. And I've had only like a detective, like a detective who in some cases had only had the slimmest clues to work on. But I've put my best effort into making sense of these clues. Now I'll give you one of the most amazing clues that I've encountered in the Gnostic Coptic materials. most of the language is Greek or borrowed from Greek, even though it's written in Coptic. And there occurs in the